Ladies and gentlemen, viewers and subscribers, welcome to Chris Media. Today I've got yet another interesting video with what's going on in the country and beyond. I just wanted to stay tuned, take your time, listen and watch this video closely from the beginning to the end. Try as much as possible to help us to share it so others can benefit from it. You should as well subscribe for more videos. Take your time, listen to it. Let's go.
Let me begin with you, Mr. Yusuf. Give us an understanding for what we know. And there is this argument about the database of the Nigerian people, how many households that we have. We do know that based on the statistics released by the NBS, we have about 43 million households. There are two different funds that we are looking at here. A 500 billion naira from the 2022 Appropriation Act. And on the other hand is the World Bank initiated $800 million US. The likes of Falana will argue that you cannot borrow to give palliatives. But it does look like things are already in motion because the federal government had approached the National Assembly to say, give us, approve this money so that we can disburse 8,000 naira to 12 million households, and it will be for 6 months. What is your initial view about this move of the federal government?
Well, thank you very much. First is to appreciate the fact that the administration acknowledges the pain that the citizens are going through as a result of current economic reforms, particularly the fuel subsidy removal. There are two big issues around this particular initiative, because I know that government will still come up with other initiatives. First is the principle of cash transfers. In this type of environment, and in particular even in many African or developing countries, the effectiveness of cash transfers is not something that one is very comfortable about. We have gone through this route before under the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management under the previous administration. We had the so-called social register. So much money was disbursed, and I'm not sure that up till now we can see much of impact. Because the reality is that we have a major issue with data credibility and data integrity. That is a major issue. And now when I listen to some spokesperson of government talking about transferring the money through digital transfers, through wallets and so on. But the reality is that most of the most vulnerable segments of the society don't have bank accounts. Many of them don't have wallet. They don't even know what wallet means. So ab initio, you have a challenge or the risk of even excluding the most vulnerable in terms of reaching out to the most vulnerable under this scheme. Secondly, is to look at the materiality of the amount that we are talking about. We are talking about 8,000 naira per month, per household. Yes, I mean, if we talk of the rural areas, the villages, 8,000 naira may have some impact. But the reality today is that close to 60% of the population are in the cities. 8,000 naira per month may not have any significant effect, apart from the fact that it is not likely to reach a significant percentage of the vulnerable group. A bag of rice, for instance, is 50,000 naira. Let's even assume that these people will not buy a bag of rice. In Lagos today, there is this measure of selling rice and grains that they call paint bucket, small paint bucket. It's 3,500 for rice. It's 3,000 naira for beans. It's 1,500 naira for gari. Between these three buckets, you have already exhausted the 8,000 naira. Take the cost of transportation. Minimum cost of transportation for an average worker to commute today, especially in Lagos and possibly in other cities, it's about 1,000 naira per day. Some pay even much more than that. So in terms of materiality, I also have an issue with it. So, but the principle of responding to the challenges I agree with, but I think we need to think of something that is much more inclusive, something that is more impactful, something that is much more sustainable. So that is why I would suggest that we should have a review of all of this. And in any case, I don't think it's a good idea to borrow money. We are talking of $800 million for purposes of cash transfers, with all these issues of credibility around the whole process and all this implementation risk and even some corruption risk around the implementation. I think it is better to invest that kind of money in things that will have more enduring impact, because the key pain points for the citizens today are the cost of food, the cost of transportation, and the cost of energy. Those are the immediate things that we need to deal with. So whatever intervention we are coming with has to focus on these key areas. And in order to have an impact, it is important that we engage stakeholders in each of these segments so that we can come up with policy responses that will be more impactful and more sustainable. So those are my initial thoughts about the whole issue about this.
And in fact, when you are capturing it, I think, Mr. Yusuf, because some of you, the big men, the prices of the commodities you are talking about in the rich men communities, because I had to go to the communities where the so-called palliatives could be directed to, and my prices are a bit different. What I found out is a bit different. Even the measure that you're talking about is probably larger than what these kind of families are going to buy in the market. This is what I found out. They will not use the bucket, Mr. Yusuf, because that is too much, because they may not be able to afford it at the time. What they might use is a module, which is even smaller. It's like a bigger tomato paste can, which is bigger than the usual. They call it a module. So it's about 1,000. Module, yeah, that's what they call it.
I go to the market.
You go to the market too. Interesting. So that price is for rice is 1,100. It used to be about 700 about a month and a half ago, before the removal of subsidy. The module of beans is now 1,000 naira. It used to be about 500 naira or thereabout about a month and a half ago. A bag, a 1 kilogram of semovita is 800 naira now. It used to be a lot less than that. A module of gari is 700 naira. A bottle of groundnut oil is 1,200 naira. A bottle of palm oil is 1,100. A plate of tomato is 400 naira. In fact, I don't want to say how much a ball of tomato is in the market now. You'll be shocked. That plate of tomato is about maybe 6 or 7 pieces in it. So divide by 400, it tells you that you get a ball of tomato about 100 naira. That's how much it sells. Now, a plate of pepper is 200 naira, and a bag of pure water sachet water that you will get is now 250 naira. And that is what these people who are in the lower cadre, which the likes of the World Bank had captured to say, they spend less than $1 today. And now the rate of the dollar is about 800 and something, 80 naira or thereabout to the naira. So my question is, I'd like to ask you, although difficult to answer, but let us know. This palliative, this 8,000 naira, good or bad idea? Because we need to know, because this money is not for government. This money is supposed to be for the people of Nigeria, and the people of Nigeria need to know whether it's a good or a bad idea. From your point of view as a professional, good or bad?
Well, I wouldn't want to use the word good or bad. I would just say that there should be better ways of investing that kind of money to make a much bigger impact in a manner that is inclusive and that is systemic and system-wide. That is what I will say. And just as I said, we know what the pain points are. Food prices, cost of transportation, cost of energy. So we should engage stakeholders and come up with specific interventions that will make an impact in those areas. So that is the way I will respond to it. And let me also add very quickly, all the agencies of government need to be on the same page as far as mitigating the hardship of these economic policies are concerned. I say this because, take for instance, between the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Nigeria Customs Service, the exchange rate that is now being used for the computation of import duties has risen by over 80%. They were ascribing that to the fact that because the naira is now has been floated, then they have to change the exchange rate computation. At the inception of this administration, the exchange rate that was 422 to the dollar. Then, shortly after, it moved to 589. As I speak to you today, the exchange rate for the computation of import for all imports is now 770. So effectively, for all imports that are coming to this country, import duties in nominal terms has been increased by 82%. This has very, very profound implications for inflation. So on one hand, the president has assured us that measures are being taken to mitigate these measures, to mitigate the pains. Now we have these agencies of government coming up with additional burden. The burden that this will impose on the citizens in terms of inflationary effects will almost be as high as what we are experiencing with the fuel subsidy. So it is very important that there's an intervention at that level to make sure that both the customs and the central bank go back to what the status quo was, to allow for this pressure on the citizens to calm down a little. How on earth can we be talking about 82% increase in import duty across all categories of imports? We are talking of raw materials, we are talking of vehicles, we are talking of mass transit buses, we are talking of equipment that are used by manufacturers. How are we going to cope with that? So that is why I'm talking about coordination. It's very important. The president cannot be saying one thing and some agencies of government are doing a completely different thing. Only recently we heard that there's an imposition of 7.5% VAT on diesel at a time when the citizens are complaining that the energy cost is becoming very prohibitive. So we need to coordinate all of these things. And the good thing is that the president has a special advisor on coordination, the special advisor on strategy. They should weigh in on this and advise the administration appropriately. It is very, very important.